Brodes Media.
What is going on, everyone? Welcome on into Open Ice Hits. The playoff action continues to get intense. There's no doubt about it. Before we dive into it all, how was your Memorial Day weekend, Durso? We had a little bit of a day off, if you will, because of the holiday weekend, and getting back into the flow of things takes an adjustment period. So how was your weekend?
It was good. Quiet. Not too much going on. I mean, the weather didn't cooperate at all, so I didn't get to do much of anything. I was kind of home for most of it. But it was good. I mean, being home, not having to do anything else allowed me to sit back and watch these games, more than a few, obviously. And yeah, it was just good. Good to hang out with some people, kind of had a few people over here on Monday, and it was good. It was just good to have a couple of days to actually, try to recharge the batteries a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Trust me, there's always that day or 2 days where I need that body to just lay in bed and rejuvenate,
Yeah.
and you know what I mean, to get that extra spark. So here we are. We have that spark. And all right, we're going to dive right into this action here with the Scheifele hit last night. I was so stoked to not because it's a happy thing for Maple Leafs fans by any means, but I was so happy to discuss what happened in Toronto, Game 7, and then Scheifele happened last night, and it just had my blood boiling because I don't get it. And I believe it was Gallagher after the game who was getting interviewed on a TSN feed or one of the Winnipeg feeds or whatever feed it was, and he said he knows better than that. He knows better than that, and that's what makes it the strangest part is respected guy. He does. He knows that hit just can't happen, and there was no reason for it. It was a very unavoidable hit. I know there was an empty net goal with one goal game in the playoffs, but, I mean, you do not have to throw that heavy of a hit after back-checking from all the way from your zone to just go full speed into someone, wrapping around the puck into an empty net. It just does not have to happen.
Right. So I'm trying to figure out the best way to dissect the whole thing, not just the Scheifele hit, but kind of like you said, everything that goes into it. Because I watched your Coffee with Brodes stream on Tuesday morning, and there were a lot of people that were ready to hear about what we thought about the Toronto series ending on Monday night. I can tell you honestly, I did not expect there to be a hockey game on Monday night at that stage. Like, I expected there to be one game, I guess it would have been, or whatever it was, just to keep moving on with the second round. I did not think that series was going 7. It did. And then you started to watch, and as everything just broke down, Montreal just kept pushing forward, getting the opportunities, taking advantage of them. I think it was, in that Game 7, it was Brendan Gallagher's first goal of the series. I wasn't really surprised, to be honest. I'm like, that's the type of guy I kind of would expect to come through in a Game 7. It was just this, we were watching this here we go again thing, and it really was like, I still would have, going in, I think I still would have picked Toronto to win the game just because of the talent level they have. But as I'm watching it unfold, I'm going, none of this is shocking. I was stuck to my guns on picking Toronto and was wrong, but I'm like, none of this is shocking at all. And then we get to this game, and for the most part, as I'm watching, first period was really good, high energy. You saw Montreal come out with momentum because of everything, I guess, that had gone on earlier in the week.
Yeah,
they had played more recently. Yeah, no kidding.
They dominated in the beginning of the game. I was wondering, did Winnipeg even know the game started? I mean, that's how strong I thought Montreal looked in the beginning stages of this.
What's funny too is as the game went on, especially down the stretch in the third period, I was even about to, right before the empty net goal happened, I was even about to tweet toward the end of the game, I know he gave up 4 goals. Connor Hellebuyck kept the Jets in that game, especially in the second period. I'm like, this game could have been way worse. It was only a 1-goal game because of Connor Hellebuyck. And then I look at the goal scores for Montreal. And outside of Brendan Gallagher's goal, which I think really was a game changer in that one, because it looked like here comes Winnipeg, third period. You're going to wear down this team that played as recently as Monday. But I'm looking at who scored for Montreal leading up to that, and I'm going, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, who was the hero of Game 6 to get it to a Game 7 in the first place, who didn't play in Game 1. And you're going, looking back on it, you're going, why? Why didn't he even play in Game 1? I mean, obviously, this guy's a talented player who keeps
we know why.
Rising to the
They didn't want to play any of the young kids, and we talked about how stupid
but
that
now
was.
Right, but now you look at it and go, geez, do you think it was a dumb decision? Look at how they're stepping up in big games. Nick Suzuki with a filthy goal that was just, how do you have that patience? It was outstanding. And you were on your way to that because, even the moments right before the hit, it becomes a 4-3 game. And why? Because you get a good play with an empty net. with Kyle Connor on the ice, right? Like you get those guys to step up, and you kind of were waiting for it. And okay, puck goes out of the zone. You see Jake Evans start to chase it down. He's got how much space between him and the next guy coming back? So, all right, it looks like it's going to somewhat end. I mean, you never know. As soon as the puck goes behind the net, you never know. All I know watching that is you're going to wave off the icing, and you're going to wait and see what happens from there. And I kind of just couldn't believe the hit. Like, I'm not sitting here saying he shouldn't expect contact. He should. You know, a guy's trying to come back and make a play. Sure, you might take a little bit of a bump. This was pile driving a guy, though. This was and more than anything,
intent to pretty much just annihilate and destroy a human being. And the problem I have is with that, there's so many people that says it's the playoffs. It doesn't matter. It's a 1-goal game. You got to leave everything out there. Well, guess what? When you see a guy get stretchered off, you can tell that it's overboard. And I think that we're in this weird spot right now as a league where players are trying to learn what this new style is. And there's like this line, and we're in this adjustment period as players recognize it. So I think that's why this keeps happening. Whether it's Wilson, this, Kadri, that, whatever it is, I think we're seeing this new era trying to be implemented into the league, and these players that have been involved in previous eras are somewhat struggling to learn that. But that's no excuse.
Look, the thing I don't like, and again, maybe this goes into what's going to happen from here because of the fact that we've talked about this. It's very results-based, right? Like when we see someone get suspended or we see somebody lay a big hit and then we decide, like we start talking, having these conversations about, well, what's going to happen to the player? We base it so much on the end result of the play, right? So technically, like when we had the Tom Wilson discussion, as much as we both disagreed with what happened and what he got for it and how, and again, if you would have suspended him even for just the next game when they played the Rangers again, you could have avoided all of that other stuff that was going on in that game. What happened? Like, you know, we didn't realize, I guess, in the moment that Artemi Panarin was going to be done for the season as a result of that at that moment, right? The end result of this is just, it's beyond scary. I mean, I watched the way he looked on the ice, and I'm sitting here audibly going, oh my God, is he going to be okay? Because he looks like he's knocked out cold to begin with, it looks like.
Yeah,
and then on top of it,
Ehlers was the one blocking everybody from the scrum, which was just amazing. In that moment, to think to do that is pretty absurd.
I've got to echo what I saw a lot of online. There's a ton of people who have gained a whole new amount of respect for him to recognize not only do you need to call for help, but to do what you can to keep the pile, because you knew what was going on. I mean, and he's right. Like, I think he even said after the game, you knew there was going to be a scrum after that, obviously. But, I mean, let's this way. I never understand. Like, of course I understand, but, like, sometimes in the moment like that, you almost wonder how the guy, if it's so plainly obvious who committed this incident, you know, who made the hit, how the first guy in, like Tyler Toffoli, I think, was the first guy in. How you don't just go in and almost want to sucker punch the guy because when you see what your teammate looks like in that moment. I mean, and there was enough time to see him flip over backwards, land the way that he did, which is scary enough as it is. But when it makes me think, when are we going to be satisfied with what happens to a player before we really take some crazy action on a player? And again,
I think we're
Mark
starting to.
Right.
It's
like Mark Scheifele's not,
way.
and because you've already said it, Mark Scheifele's not this player typically. You know, he doesn't go in and try to hurt somebody. He doesn't go in and do something. But clearly, this was not just I'm going to just try to hit the guy and make things tough for him because he's trying to finish off a game. Like this, it almost overshadows the whole series. Like, this was a good hockey game, and you just did that. Now I don't feel like it's a good hockey game anymore. Like, now I don't know what I want out of this.
Yeah,
do I want like do I want to see, like, because here's the thing, he's going to get suspended. We all know it. What's he going to get suspended for? I think it's safe to say 2 games, but 2 to 3. There's people out there that want him gone for the whole series.
Well, I think that's happening every time. Every time something big happens, someone wants someone gone forever. Someone wants this guy to never play again, this guy for the rest of the series. He doesn't have a track record, so he doesn't deserve to get suspended for the rest of the series, no matter how brutal it is. But how much of the reaction in his face, like when they show the zoom-ins as they're going to commercial break, and you can see his reaction and to the, I don't know, does that matter at all? That his just because his demeanor in this case, it's not someone that we're accustomed to seeing. He's a well-respected guy.
Right.
How much of does that change your perspective on it, or does it not at all? I think the emotions got the best of him, is what it is. He was frustrated they were losing, and he just pummeled someone and totally disrespected him.
Well, what do you typically see when something like this happens? When you give up, you didn't really get set up, puck goes out, you're not going to win a race, you're going to get scored on probably, and the game's going to be over, right? So what do you normally see when this happens? First guy back who's a little bit late, maybe comes in and using the speed he's used to try to get back, takes that momentum and then grabs and holds his stick out and just whacks it over the crossbar and goes, you know what, we lost. There goes, I'll break my stick. I'll do something like that. And instead I think he took his frustration out on Jake Evans a little bit there, no question about it. It's a hard hit to read to an extent too, because as you look at it, the only thing that's like, there's obviously there's bad to it. I'm not trying to say, like, I'm not trying to defend him, but what is it? He technically the puck's not gone from his stick long enough to sit there and say, well, gee, it's like an interference play where the play is over technically. I mean, you're going in there to try to make a little bit of contact. It's the extent of the contact, and obviously the fact that by the book it is a charge. That I think is what it comes down to. Like, by the book, it's a very clear charge. But what else is it beyond that? I don't think he really truly leaves his feet until his momentum takes him that way.
It's as simple as
it's unnecessary, sure.
Yeah,
right, but it's unnecessary. And then you go, well, look how far he came to do that. And I know there's people who are going to sit there and go, well, he was gliding when he got there. He wasn't gliding at the blue line, So, you tell me how much speed a guy like that picks up from blue line to blue line, and that it's not impossible for a guy, if he's gliding, to just peel off and, smack your stick against the board.
Yeah, there is a side of me that thinks that in his mind, because this just goes back to who Scheifele has always been. I think there's something in his mind that said, I'm here's an empty net goal. I'm going to leave everything out there. I want to make sure that we keep this a one-goal game. I don't think his intentions were, I'm going to brutally hurt this person. But once he recognized that Evans was close, he allowed his body to take over and his frustrations to boil over, and that's why he said, screw it, I'm just going to pound them. So I don't think during the back check his motor was, this guy's going to get annihilated, but as he got closer, he realized that. But I just feel, and you talked about this when we discussed Tom Wilson specifically, you said, we've been doing this for how long, and we're already talking about Wilson again? I just feel like I can throw this right back at you. We're not just with Wilson, but just
how many episodes have we had where we have to talk about stuff like this?
Yeah. It's a joke, and the NHL has a problem.
Do you want to know which one I thought of, to be honest with you?
What's that?
I think we briefly mentioned the Shane Gostisbehere suspension. And not that it was similar to Wilson or anything like that, but it's an empty net goal. The difference was that happens in front of you. A guy wins a race, the puck is in front of you. It's not like he's chasing one down behind the net and now has to come back in front to score the goal. It happened in front of you. So if he's going to just tap the puck into the net when he's skating forward anyway, you knew it was going to happen. You didn't even need to lean on him, even though it probably wasn't too much. That was one where I think the action looked worse than the end result per se, because he does lean on him. The guy falls. He goes into the boards. He could have not gotten up. Instead, he did get up. No big deal, because he wasn't hurt for terribly long. He came back and was able to play again toward the end of the season, I believe. But this is you look at the way he looks after that hit in this game, and you go, how long before it's somebody's career? How long before we're talking about a guy who literally couldn't get off the ice because he's paralyzed or something like that, because he flips over and he lands right in his head. You see the way his head, not only the whiplash effect, but the way his head lands, and you go, I don't know how he ever ended up in a hospital, quite honestly. Like this, he was being evaluated at the arena.
He didn't go,
and then he was back
at the hospital at all?
Not that I know of, because they said he was.
I did see an update about it. He
might have, but there was the immediate update after the game was he's being evaluated here. He's not at a hospital. As far that's what they knew. And then the last thing I saw was the word was he's back at the team hotel, and he's resting. He's shaken. He's very shaken.
I did see that one, yeah.
But he's alert and he's okay.
I didn't realize his history with him specifically, because they were talking about
that
Scheifele
too.
None, but he Scheifele has no history, and Evans has a lot of head injury problems.
Has a head injury history. And can you imagine too? I mean, it was the guy's 25th birthday. He's scoring a goal to seal a game. It's not going to be the game-winning goal, but you're winning the game for your team. You're going to make a play. You're going to win a race to get down the ice, and you're going to score a goal in the second round of the playoffs. That, by the way, we're going to look at take that incident out of the game for a minute. We would be looking at this game going, here they come again. Another game 1 win for the Montreal Canadiens, who just continue to, and in fairness, I did see one sentiment that I think is very, very true, and I think it's even more possible now that we know something's going to happen later today. Like, we know something's coming from Mark Scheifele. So because of that, this is a tight hockey team. I mean, if you just took one look at Shea Weber, who is doing everything he can to make it very clear you don't do that to my guy, and then the whole team, pretty much, I believe it was the whole team's on the ice as they are taking him off the ice, trying to give him any encouragement possible. And it mars a win like this, obviously. Like, it's a huge win for the Canadiens in this series, and your emotions are totally different after it because now you're thinking about your teammate. You're thinking about what's going to happen as a result of this. You're thinking, I'm sure you're kind of in a way thinking about how is the league going to address it, because there have been disagreements about the way the league has addressed certain things like this. But you've got a 1-0 series lead. And you've obviously now probably are going to go on and play game 2, maybe game 3, maybe game 4 with how quick game 4 follows up. Maybe you'll play the next 2 or 3 without Mark Scheifele in the Jets lineup. And what does that do for you? Like, I honestly, I feel so confident in them right now as a team because I think they're rolling at the right time because they've won 4 games in a row now. And now now you're going to take probably the best player the Winnipeg Jets have to offer off the ice because he made a split-second decision to go from, okay, I'm going to try to win a race and try to nullify this empty net goal, to I'm going to just drive right through the guy, and now I'm not going to be able to play.
Yeah, that's a good point with the Canadiens.
I feel like they are going, like, I feel like they might be, they just might be from 4 seed that we didn't give a shot against Toronto to they might be in the Final Four.
Yeah, no,
I really think that
there is an element to it of the fellas are now going to regroup as a team and just play like more of a squad, are going to play closer together for Evans. There's also this element of, because they were talking about it post game, and depending on when Scheifele does return, and it does kind of bring it full circle with what you were talking about, how it ruined the hockey game. Well, hopefully this doesn't ruin the series, and what I mean by that is you're right with the Canadiens. Just go focus on playing your game. But what happens when Scheifele does return? And if the Canadiens get so sucked into, now they're professionals, right? They got to block that. I'm not saying it's easy to. It's in a very emotional time. But could it be to the point where they end up focusing so much on how do we make it living hell for him? How do we get into his head? How do we piss him off? How do we make sure he understands what he did? How do we get into his grill? Do they focus so much on the Scheifele revenge? And keep in mind, the response post-game is so close to the accident actually happening that you're going to pour out more emotions during your answers in that moment compared to after a 3-game suspension or a 2-game suspension. But it would be tough for the Canadiens to be playing strong hockey, and then here's Scheifele that enters the lineup again, and now your focus level is, okay, we got to get this guy back, you know?
Well, if he's not on the ice, then I think it becomes easier, obviously. And I think, like I said, I think it's at least going to be 2 games. So I think that there's no reason to believe that they can't come out in game 2 and game 3 and be focused on the task at hand. I think Shea Weber's too smart to do that too as a captain. I think he knows the task at hand. Shea Weber's the type of guy who I think, wants to win and knows that. And as emotional as he was in the moment, obviously for one, I like he gets into it with, I don't remember exactly who he even got into it with because I was too busy watching where Evans was and I'm basically trying to watch Scheifele out of that scrum more than anything. And I'm sitting there watching him going, Shea, I guess I know who you'll want to go after, and maybe someone's trying to step in, but you're kind of picking a fight with the wrong guy, so to speak, if that's what you want to do or whatever. But he's too smart of a guy and too competitive of a guy to, I think, let this get to him and the rest of the team. Like, I think now, like, this is to an extent John Tavares all over again, because you could play for this guy, you could try to win some games as real. I mean, when John Tavares got hurt in the last series, they won the next 3 games.
Yeah, that's a good segue.
Like
though, for sure.
they ended up coming out playing like, we're gonna get this thing to the second round because he's gonna be ready. And then everything else just fell apart from there, and Montreal got going. I don't feel that way about the Montreal Canadiens. First of all, I think the Montreal Canadiens are already the us against the world team as it is. Like, no one's given. I feel like nobody gave them a shot in this series either. And now they're going to go out and probably find a way to win it because that's just the type of team that they are. But on top of that, I think that this gets a team closer together. And I just don't see them doing anything in the moment about that. I mean, like, it's not like Shea Weber said, "I'm going to go out there after that one," and now with 50
No,
seconds
it
left,
was
I'm going to pick.
Edmondson or who said it after the game? He said,
Oh, I know. And by the way, the
yeah.
freak out over that's ridiculous, by the way, because to say you're going to make life miserable for somebody, that means a lot of things. It doesn't mean they're going to go out and sucker punch the guy when he comes back.
Is there freaking out happening with that? Well,
There were a couple people.
upset.
There were
that
some
what, he
people
was
like
gonna
there
go
were
after
people
him
who
or
there were
something?
people who literally said that now Edmondson should get a game for saying that, because if you want to call the other thing intent to injure, then that's intent.
That's actually
Like, I'm like, come
embarrassing.
on. You know what that means? That means if he's around the net, you're going to give him a couple shots, or you're going to start scrums with him involved after whistles. That's what it means. It means you're not going to let him forget that you did this in game one. It does not mean that someone's going to go out there and, do what Anthony Duclair did against Tampa Bay and go, you know what? This guy just came back from an injury. This game's over. I'm going to slash him on the back of the leg.
Yeah,
like, you're not going out there and taking
in my life.
Like, it's exactly like, I love it because they're going to sit there and say that's what you get for players saying they got to police themselves. Like, no, what that means is you're going to create scrums. You're going to be physical with the guy, because if this is how he wants to play, and again, I think it was a split-second decision. I don't think this is truly the type of player Mark Scheifele is, and I don't think that this should be anything that mars the rest of his career per se. Like, it's a bad moment for him. He made the wrong decision. He hit the guy too hard in a vulnerable position in a situation where it was unnecessary. And I think he'll move on from it and go back to being the player he is, because he was one of the reasons that the Edmonton series was so good, like, to an extent, like for the Jets. Like, you watched him help carry that team back into games. When they looked like they were down and out, he's scoring big goals, or he's setting up big goals. He's one of their key players for a reason. But it was unnecessary, and it was bad, and I don't want to stay on this for too long on this episode, because there's other good hockey happening. I think we got a great hockey game to follow this one that doesn't have any story other than being a good hockey game. But I think that this is now overshadowing not only this game but the rest of the series now. Like, this is what this series is all about at this point. And I don't know how long it's going to last. Like, I don't know how long the series is going to go. It could certainly be shorter now that he's going to probably miss time, and I think Montreal is motivated. So I don't know, but it was unnecessary, and otherwise, just wrecked what was a great hockey game, because we really saw how close these two teams could be. It was going to be a battle right to the end. Okay, an empty net goal is the difference. It's a 5-3 final. It was a 4-3 game with a minute and a half left. That's fun, and instead, we got this to talk about.
Yeah, no, it's definitely disappointing for sure. So you did touch on the Toronto stuff, and I think that's where I want to head in the direction now, because, I was big on Toronto all year long. They're up 3-1.
Yeah, you were.
Yeah, I mean, as I should be. They're a good team, and
Yes.
they pissed it away, and it's shame on them. It's like I've been listening to their whole media market and what's happening and how they feel, and, look, you can, like, what – I think Steve Dangle, I listened to him because it's just hysterical to see his reaction, and I was a little disappointed. I expected more of a freak out. His Game 6 reaction was way more entertaining, in my opinion. I think Game 7 was more just real pain and raw reaction of here we go again, but he kind of made a great point. And, yeah, there were injuries, right? Muzzin injury played a huge role in what was going on and all of that. And even with Anderson and net, you knew that wasn't happening, so Campbell was in net, and he was nowhere even close to the problem, although didn't love the first goal by Montreal, their 5-hole coming down the rush in that Game 7, but there's no way that you sit here and analyze this 3-1 series lead and you say, yeah, Campbell was the issue. But if you think about their additions to the D-line, their D-core, I should say, on the blue line, if you talk about their team depth-wise, they add some veteran presence on the back end with Joe Thornton and Spezza, and you also have players like Wayne Simmons, so you add toughness. You added every area that you were talking about over the last couple of years. What more can you actually do to get over the hump? Like, what more can you seriously do? And then, fast forward to next season. You win all these regular season games. Like, they are actually irrelevant at this point. Winning regular season hockey to anyone who cares about the Maple Leafs is just irrelevant. So how do you possibly approach this if you're looking at it from Toronto's perspective? You did everything you possibly could do right. Your stars stepped up. Matthews wins the Richard. Marner's unbelievable. Everything happened the right way, and you still lose. Like, what the hell do you do?
Well, I'm sure there's people that would argue Matthews and Marner in this playoff series because
Sure.
when those two combine for one goal, I think that's a huge problem. No,
Definitely.
you know, it's the regular season argument for sure. Like it makes a lot of the regular season irrelevant at that point. Like you could have a great record and it's not going to matter. And even the John Tavares wasn't even an excuse because you won 3 games without him. You were in the driver's seat. And look, I don't fault them in game 5 per se. When Montreal had their backs to the wall in game 5, you kind of got what you expected. Montreal goes out, plays a first period that's full of urgency. You get a lead. Toronto chipped away at it. I mean, Toronto won that, or not won. They got back into that game is what I mean to say. They tied it back up on 2 goals by Jake Muzzin. At one point in time, I remember having this conversation over the weekend. You know who their leading? I mean, look, who their leading goal scorer was in the playoff series? It's actually not as out. It's not as out there as it's okay. And I'm not trying to lead it on that it's as out there as you think. It was William Nylander. He had 5 goals in the series. Okay, that's fine. That's great. Like he goes out and has a really good series. I don't want to gloss over the fact that like him scoring 5 goals and leading the team isn't a good thing for them. It is. But then go to who number 2 was? I don't remember if he finished with 3 or if he got a 4th. I don't think he got a 4th. I think he finished with 3 because they didn't score in game. They scored 1 goal in game 7. So after game 6, he had 3 goals. Know who it was?
Who was it?
Jason Spezza.
Oh, yeah. Jason Spezza did have a hell of a series.
And then the only other player who had more than 1 goal in the series was Jake Muzzin with the 2 in game 5. That's it. You had 3 guys with more than 1 goal in the series and a handful that had none, like Mitch Marner, who you go, when's it going to happen?
He was horrendous. He's flipping pucks out of the zone. He looked like a child that was afraid of the moment. And look, when you're young, and I'm big on growth in sports. There's a difference between watching young players take steps and strides as development and then looking like afraid of the moment. And he looked afraid of the moment in more than just game 7, in a lot of games, and that's a problem.
Right. You know what it is about this series though too, and it's funny because the particular instance we're talking about isn't even the one that costs them a game per se, because the goal that gets scored off of that delay of game penalty isn't a winner. It's not anything like that. But how many things can we go back to and point maybe after from the 3-0 lead that Montreal had in game 5, Toronto chips away, they get it tied back up, and then what do you have from there? Mistake in overtime, blind pass by Galchenyuk that leads to a 2-0. They score, they win. You go to game 6, goalie interference penalty that probably was avoidable by Nylander. They score off of that. You challenge the play, which there wasn't really much. I don't think there was much there anyway. Like you even texted me, if this is coming back, I'm not watching hockey anymore. and I looked at it later, and I'm like, because I'm going, look, I understand why a coach. Again, it goes back to what we talked about last show. I understand why a coach might challenge it, but I don't know what you're seeing there per se. Like I'm looking at a goalie who's halfway out of his crease in a play where the puck's in the crease. What do you think's going to happen?
Yeah, that was Corey Perry backdoor, right? That's the one where it was
Corey
Perry.
It wasn't even really backdoor as much because it just got in there, and he was just the guy who happened to be there. I mean, actually, believe it or not, I love goals like that when they show the net cam because a guy who's that close and sees it just fires it right off the camera. Yeah, it's great. Yeah. I love when that happens.
Can't believe we're still talking about Corey Perry this way, this deep into his
career. I know.
But
well, then even I know we're kind of off with the Montreal Winnipeg game 1, but even Corey Perry set up Eric Stahl for a goal.
That's what happens, though. Guys step up. It's always those unsung heroes, and
right.
And he's got a name that wouldn't make it seem like an unsung hero, but he is. I mean, no one would think Corey Perry would be this lethal to start a playoff run with the Canadiens. At least I did.
Am I right? Like, what year is this that these two are still putting?
I'm waiting for Getzlaf to come on the ice. I mean, Getzlaf, but on a 2-on-1.
But doesn't it sound like Team Canada circa 2010 or something like that? Eric Stahl, Corey Perry, Shea Weber. Like, look at these guys stepping up. It's but this is what the playoffs is all about, right? Like we've said this all the time. So, okay, that goal happens. You challenge. You lose the challenge. Mitch Marner delay a game penalty where, again, unnecessary delay a game penalty. Didn't have to do that. They score on the 5-on-3. Now it's 2-0. They rally back from that. What happens in overtime? A turnover. One of the only things that you gave them. I mean, they outshot them 13-2.
Yeah.
13-2 and didn't win the game.
Yep.
And then even in game 7, it's a neutral zone turnover that leads to the rush for Gallagher, 5-hole goal. Then you get another one, and it's coming right down to it. Like, I think
Game
everything was about the
7,
mistakes.
they didn't even play hard though. Like that's what would irk me the most if I'm a fan of the Maple Leafs. They played Game 7 like it was a regular season hockey game. They were not, which is weird because they win a lot of regular season hockey games, but they were not like their work ethic and their determination flat as can be. They were a flat hockey team for Game 7. And was it because there were fans in Montreal and no fans in Toronto? Well, there were. I don't know.
There were a couple.
There were actually a couple. I was thinking that, but not enough of like the couple thousand or whatnot. But I'll tell you what, man, they look dead as can be in a Game 7, and that is disappointing.
It's not good when you came out in after Game 6 and said we weren't ready to play then either. Like that's not really a good thing. The issue I have with that is that, and it's a formula that I've seen from a lot of teams that don't make the playoffs or that barely make the playoffs and have games like this. You can come out and say you weren't really ready to play it in the first period. All right, so be it. Like it happens. You have off nights, whatever. It was still scoreless. You had every opportunity in the second period to turn around and go, you know what? Not the best first period, but it's still scoreless.
You know what name we haven't mentioned once yet?
Go ahead.
Carey Price.
Yeah, I know. I mean, here's the thing, because Carey Price doesn't I didn't mention his name for the Game 1 stuff in the Jet series because again, that was it wasn't necessarily a game where you felt like both goalies were going toe to toe here. He definitely was a difference maker in the Toronto series, no question about it. I mean. But I don't know why, I don't know why Toronto came out the way they did. I don't know why the switch never flipped. I don't know, if nothing else, for the most part, from the time that first goal was scored by Montreal in that Game 7, I guess it just felt like to me, they're sitting there kind of just in their head, that was in their heads too. It's that here it is again.
They needed goal 1. They did.
I think that's what happened from the first goal. First period, if you want to say they came out flat, you want to sit there and say whatever. I'm not disagreeing that they didn't they came out flat or they weren't pushing the play as much as they could have. I'm not disagreeing with that, but it's still nothing. All you need to do is go get the first one. So come out in the second period and do that. You can flip the switch. You're a good enough team. Look at the talent you have. And they never flipped the switch.
How about that stat though about the $10 million thing? That's why I thought about Carey Price. He's the first.
Oh, because he's the only guy left. Yeah.
It was the first time a team that had a player of over $10 million advanced to the second round. That's pretty damn telling.
I don't have the list in front of me, so I'm kind of asking. He's the only goalie on that list, isn't he? One of them, right?
Yeah. I would imagine he's the only goalie.
The only reason I'm saying is because what does that tell you? If you pour a lot of money into a really good goaltender, obviously, but not only that, but it tells you, for the rest of this, everything in front of the goaltender is the only thing that's not individualized. The goalie has to be good as an individual, and it can control whether or not your team is good or bad because you need to have the goaltending. Everything else that happens in front of that is team-wide. You need to have the whole thing going. And when Toronto's getting goals from Jason Spezza and Joe Thornton and not that they didn't that doesn't make them a good team. That could have made them a team to watch for the rest of the playoffs that you go, well, the depth, is going. Austin Matthews has only one goal. Mitch Marner doesn't have a goal, but they might win a series out of it and they might move on. And if those guys get going, then really watch out. But that's not how it went. And you need those top, you're paying these guys for a reason. So you need them to step up, but it's not all them. And this is why this is why the playoffs are great.
It's just crazy to think of three
because
guys.
These $10 million, 12. I mean, Connor McDavid's a $12.5 million player. Goes out and puts up 105 points in 53 games, 56 games, whatever it turned out to be, and then gets swept out of the playoffs. Why? Because when it comes down to it, you need to have more than just one or two guys that get the job done. It's a collective effort.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's why it just makes it interesting with the Matthews contract, with the Marner contract, with the double-digit contracts that are getting thrown around. For this to be the first time, it either means the trend is going up because there's more people that have that contract, or there's a reason why those teams are failing. So it's just crazy to look at. But
I do want to echo, though. I agree. Because I'm not going to get into too much about what's going to happen from here for the Toronto Maple Leafs, but I think that in the same sense with teams that we see that regularly miss the playoffs, don't, make the playoffs every so often, whatever. This is really going to be a fascinating offseason for them because A, they're going to lose somebody to Seattle, and B, what do you do from here? Because you're right. They've got it all. I mean, I would even say that, Jack Campbell never came to my mind as the guy who could outduel Carey Price, not yet anyway, but he had a good series. He did what he had to do. So what do? You feel like you got a young goalie who's emerging, who can be capable of being your go-to guy from here. Like, I think Frederik Andersen's time might be up in Toronto at this point because I don't think he's going to want to sit there and be a backup. So, all right, you go with Jack Campbell moving forward. You've got a decor. You've got talented players, at the forward position. What do?
Do you brainwash
So
yourself into thinking that because this is how it works, right? There's a big cycle. So now, once this ends up healing a bit, this wound ends up healing, which, I don't know how easy that's going to happen. Do you tell yourself, well, John Tavares got hurt and Muzzin got hurt, and if they didn't, we'll be okay? Is that something that you start convincing yourself that that's why you lost, is because you lost Tavares and you lost Muzzin?
Not when they played most of the series, though. Like, not Tavares, but what I'm saying is that, like, you won games without Tavares in the lineup. You were one win away without him. Muzzin was only out for he was only out for game 7 or game 6 and 7. So again, you got there.
Yeah, I
like
think
Muzzin
he got hurt in 6. I think he was hurt in 6.
Right. All right. Well, then there you go. But I'm saying, you got there. You got the 3-1 with Muzzin still in the lineup, and you played without Tavares to get there. So what's the problem? It's I don't think you can lean on injuries at this point. I think you have to just look at what happened on the ice and figure it out.
Yeah, it's all mental.
I don't know. Maybe it is all mental. Yeah, it probably is. A big chunk of it is for sure.
All mental. Crazy. You know what else is mental in a good way? This Bruins Islanders series. I'll tell you what. This is the most entertaining series for me. You get overtime winner. Cizikas comes down. Bang. How do you do? Silence the TD Garden. It's just amazing. This series to me is, look, all of it's fun, obviously, but I put my feet up for a Bruins Island. And maybe it's because we're from Philadelphia area. We get to see these teams a lot and all that. But this series to me is just amazing, amazing hockey. Marchand coming up big. Here's a power play goal. Bang. Pasta gets a hat trick. Bang. It's just it's awesome. This series is just flat out awesome. I'm enjoying it a lot.
So should we be really thankful for this series because of the fact it's 1-1? We already know there's a game 5 coming. It feels like it'll go longer. Like, I look at every other series and I go, I don't want to automatically say the Montreal Canadiens are going to win that series, but I feel like there's a bonding thing going on here between.
Yeah, you're a little too high on that than I am, but I'll let you.
No,
ride
but I'm
it.
saying because it's the comeback thing. When you come back in a series from, say, 3-1, you're definitely riding a wave. Now you're going to play for a fallen teammate probably. One of their top. It's not like it was just an average guy who made a big hit at the end of a game. It's a top guy. So that changes the course of the series. I feel like that team is now on their way to something bigger here. And then I look at the other two series and I go, without trying to jump too far ahead, because again, I think the competition that they're facing is really good, but they're both 2-0 series. I don't love the fact that a team is halfway to the mark 2 games in,
Well, you know what?
Halfway to where they need to go.
I made that mistake with Nashville. And I made that mistake with some of the others. I made that mistake with the Maple Leafs when they were up 3-1. So no more mistakes by this guy. I don't care if it's 2-0. I'm going to watch Vegas climb back into this bad boy in a couple of nights.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. That series, the other one too, because I don't feel. I've seen it around that, because Tampa Bay hasn't played their best and they've still won both games, and it feels like it's been closer. Like, I definitely don't feel like Carolina's been out of those games by any stretch. Like, that's a tight series, and that one could turn in a moment. Like, but I think from a results standpoint, like, I kind of really wanted Carolina to win game 2 just to make it so that this is the series we expected. It's not just going to be like, 'cause Tampa Bay looks like the team right now that I go, what could go wrong? Like, it seems like everything just breaks their way. They get the goaltending, they get the defense, they're winning games the same way. What do you have to do to beat them, even when you feel like you've outplayed them? They've got the best goalie in the league. They've got the best defenseman in the league, in my opinion, anyway. I know there's people out there that might think otherwise. I don't. I think Victor Hedman's the best defenseman. I think Andrei Vasilevsky's the best goalie.
Yeah, I don't think that's a hot take. I don't think that's
no,
a hot take.
I know it's echoed by a lot of people, but like literally, what's the reason they won games 1 and 2 outside of getting a couple timely goals? Vasilevsky and Hedman are a big part of it.
Yeah, no
right?
doubt.
And then I look at the other series and I go, Colorado's up 2-0. I think, Game 1, throw it out the window to an extent.
That was
Game
nuts.
2,
That was nuts.
Game 2, more of what I expected. Still the result, though, going kind of the way. Like,
I hated that call in overtime. Hated it.
I knew you were going to say that.
It was awful. You can't get, like, Brandon gets a goal here, which, look, they cashed in on it. That's what good teams do. But there's
Right.
no way you give the Avalanche the man advantage in that spot. No way.
Didn't it feel like which game would it have been in this? I guess Game 5 of Nashville, Carolina. Like 2 calls that early in overtime. You don't like how that disrupts the flow of things. That like, and as much as that goal that won the game for Carolina in that particular instance was at 4-on-4, so it didn't really matter. Like it's still an even strength goal. It's like, why'd you have to even make calls in the first 2 minutes of overtime? Like we haven't even gotten there yet. You know?
Yeah, let them play.
Like I get where you're coming from. All I'm trying to say is I'm not surprised at the result. So this series to me, this Boston Islanders series, is almost relieving that there's a series this competitive. Like I'm not gonna lie, like I have Boston winning the series, but I was thrilled that the Islanders won Game 2 because I'm like, good. We need somebody who's going to give us this even series. It's going to come down to like I don't think it wouldn't be fun if you even picking the team that you think is going to win. It wouldn't be fun if you go, well, Boston looks like they're just going to run away with it. And for a little while there, like I sat there and I looked and I'm like, 1-0 Boston. I'm like, oh, here it goes again.
Especially when the Bruins came back in that game too.
That too.
Yeah, you thought, here we go. The crowd was crazy. And I hate to harp on the fans again because we keep doing it. But when you don't see it for a year and a half and you finally get it, it adds. It really does.
It's a story.
Add.
So I look at this and I go, thank you, Casey Cizikas, for scoring on the one opportunity you got in overtime and making this feel like the even series it really is. Now I can look forward to Game 3 coming up. Game 4 when someone's got a 2-1 lead. See, I love that. That's the dynamic I also love is if any of these other series, and I'm not going to jump too far ahead in the Montreal-Winnipeg series after just one game, but go to the other 2 that are very clearly already 2-0. If Tampa wins Game 3, what do you think's going to happen in the rest of the series? Like Carolina could cut into that deficit, but you still know that Tampa's got the upper hand. If Colorado wins Game 3, a 3-0, like 2-1 makes Game 4 so much more exciting because of the fact that a team needs that game to avoid the 3-1. It looks like it's over. Like those are the series, like to me, that like I love series like that because when it's 2-1, you know how important Game 4 is to the team that's trailing. You're either going to feel like you're right back in it or you're going to feel like it's over possibly. I love the fact that we're going to a Game 3 in this series, not knowing who's going to win and going, somebody's getting a 2-1 lead, which means that Game 4 now is magnified to that level. It's only when we get to Game 5 that we don't know yet if it's going to be that 3-1, well, it's only a matter of time for Boston or the Islanders or whoever, or it's 2-2, here we go, Game 5. And then Game 6 becomes the same. Like, you set yourself up with a 1-1 series for Game 3 to matter big time, then Game 4 is going to matter. Then if that's tied, then Game 5, 6, and 7 all come down to the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right.
Totally changed it. 3-0, you almost start to like, we did this with the other series. Like we did this with, who else had 3-1 leads or what was even 2-0 leads, I think.
Yeah,
like
it was
we did
the
this.
Nashville series. It was
Tampa
series.
too.
Yeah,
it was Tampa too because Tampa was up 2-0. And we went, can we just get to the next round then? Like if this is who's going to win, let's just get to the next round. I don't want to see 3-0 series.
I don't feel that way with Colorado though because you're going back to Vegas and that's it. Like Vegas is too good to roll over and die.
I don't feel that way about Tampa Bay because at 2-0 because I go, they're closer than what they are. It's not, you know what it is about Carolina in this series? It's not like the thing that I thought would make this series 2-0 Tampa if it were to go that way is what's made it 2-0 Tampa, and that's goaltending.
Yeah.
It's not like Alex Nedeljkovic is not holding his own, going toe-to-toe with Andrei Vasilevsky. He's doing his part.
Yeah.
So I don't feel like I don't feel like this series is over. The way that the game went for Colorado and Vegas in Game 2 makes me feel like that's far. I mean, how many chances did Vegas have to win that game where they hit a post?
10 billion. 10 billion.
Right. And don't get me wrong, I want to credit Philip Grubauer for having probably the best game I've seen him have in the playoffs so far. He did his part. And yes, when it comes down to it, whether you like the call or you don't like the call like you do, look who was on the ice. You knew they were going to try to make it happen. They got the space they needed to, and the big guys did it. Yeah, that's what's going to happen. I know, but that's what's going to happen. Like if those guys are out there, that's what the job is at that point. You got handed the opportunity. You might want to go finish it right there, and they did. And these players, these 3 players, McKinnon, Landeskog, Rantanen, Cale Makar on the back end of it, they're just outstanding. They're almost machine-like at this point. That's how I have it described. They're
Oh yeah, for
machine-like.
sure. Yeah, they are. They
So
are rolling.
again, I remember doing the show not too long ago, and we were looking for who the powerhouses are, and you're kind of down to, you had Tampa in there, you had Vegas in there, and Tampa's kind of showing it a little bit, like not playing their best, but still winning the games. Vegas is still very much in this series, has the talent to still hang in there. And I told you throw in Colorado, and this is why. And I know people, like there were people freaking out last night going, oh, 16-0 is still on the table. Like I know where you're going with this. It's not going to be a sweep in this series. I'd be shocked if Vegas doesn't win one, if not both in Vegas, just to make it interesting. But who knows? I mean, I still feel like Colorado's the best team left in this playoff.
Yeah,
Like
no,
that's where my
yeah.
mind is at. I feel like they're the best team left in this playoff, but I'm not ignoring the fact that we got a really good series between Boston and the Islanders, who are going to be battle tested and ready to play stiff competition. Montreal is on a roll right now and really feeling it as an underdog, which you knew somebody was going to have to emerge. Somebody's going to have to be the story where you go, where'd they come from? And Tampa's still on their run, and with Carolina still being very much involved, Tampa's still on their run, kind of looking for the repeat. So there's a number of ways that this could go from here on out, and that, I guess, is what I'm here for the rest of this round, is trying to figure out where it'll go from here. And as we move forward with some of the next few episodes that we're going to have, we'll see where it goes. I mean, I know we're going to have obviously more in this Boston Islanders series to talk about. We'll see where the other three go and who comes out on the other side as we get to the Final Four and really start to see some interesting hockey, because it's going to be teams that have not played each other for the entire year, that don't have a book on these teams. And it's going to be a lot of fun to watch down the stretch. And hopefully we don't have to have conversations like the one we spent most of this show talking about.
Yeah, that would be very upsetting. There's no doubt about it. All right, everyone. Well, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Open Ice Hits, and we'll catch you early next week.